Hello and welcome to the Coal Authority podcast. The Coal Authority exists to make a better future for people and the environment in mining areas. We carry out vital work to keep people, drinking water and the environment safe from the legacy impacts of our mining heritage. These podcasts are intended to offer some insight into the work that we do and why we do it, and we hope that you will find them interesting, and we would welcome any suggestions for content for future podcasts as these series grow. Without further ado, let's get into the next episode. Thank you.
So hello again everyone, Lee Kilby here at the Coal Authority, and we're going to do another one of a series of podcasts. This time I'm going to change the focus a little bit to some of the internal work that goes on at the Coal Authority, and I'm sat here with Mike and Rob, who are our joint heads of health, safety, wellbeing and facilities, and they are job sharing, so they're here just to talk to us about how the job share has worked and just to give us some insight in how they came about the idea really and how they've implemented it and what the challenges and positives have been for both them and their team. So, hi guys, just you'd like to introduce yourselves. Rob, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Hi Lee, I'm Rob Cooper. I'm Joint Health, Safety and Wellbeing Head here at the Coal Authority and have been since middle of August last year now, so just coming into about just shy of a year now.
Hi Lee, yes, I'm Mike Sheldon. I'm also Joint Head of Health, Safety, Wellbeing Facilities at the Coal Authority. I've been here considerably longer than Rob, back in 2001.
Okay, great, good to meet you guys. So, as we say, you're job sharing in what is an important role for the Coal Authority, obviously health, safety, wellbeing, a big part of the work we do, obviously out on sites, caring for communities and the environment. So if you don't mind just giving us, I suppose, as well, a little insight into how you ended up working at the Coal Authority, how long you've been here, and just briefly kind of talk about your career thus far.
Thankfully, yeah. Well, my career started actually in mining, so I'm one of the few people now probably at the Coal Authority that was in mining originally. But I left the mining industry like a lot of people in 1993 and went to work in waste management for about 8 years. But then back in 2001, I got the calling to come back into coal and the Coal Authority, but this time much more in the role of dealing with legacy issues. And I was within the public safety team for 4 years. During that time, a lot of the work that I did was safety related, and I actually did a lot of qualifications around health and safety as well as environmental management. And I decided that actually something I wanted to focus on and get more involved with. And actually left the authority for a year, went to a consultancy, and when the opportunity came for that role, I came back in 2008. And I've been here ever since in that role. The team itself, I was a she advisor at that time, just me. But as things have grown, the team has grown, and I eventually became kind of head of health, safety and wellbeing team. And then more recently taken over facilities as well.
I'm a little bit like Mike, bit of a journeyman in life. So, and again, like Mike, I started in the coal industry in the early 80s. And like Mike, similar sort of timescale, left in the early 90s. I took a slightly different path to Mike. I went to university from there, and then from university, I went into an engineering consultancy, spent a handful of years there, and then spotted an opportunity with the Health and Safety Executive as a trainee health and safety inspector. So I was successful there and spent around about 14 years there, something like that. Moving on through policy, through construction, inspections and factories, and then moved into a policy area and then took that policy experience into Whitehall. So I worked as a Whitehall policy advisor in the rail industry, and then again took an opportunity to move out of there into the private sector where I've been until I started here. And for me it was a chance to do something different. We've come to the end of the pandemic and I just fancied the different opportunities and looked to start thinking about part-time work. This opportunity came up and seemed like the right one for me.
Okay, great guys. So did you, when the idea kind of hatched to job share, obviously you didn't know each other, was the Coal Authority the first place that you saw that offered this kind of working, or did you find it was a struggle to find the opportunities?
Well, I guess I was looking for the opportunities rather than Mike. Mike was already here, I suppose. I was looking for part-time opportunities. I fancied something fairly a health and safety based role. I didn't want to move too far away. So, in the days of the internet, you can set your search engines up quite precisely. And I didn't look directly here, but the search engines, can't remember which one it was, just flashed up part-time head of health and safety, and it's in Mansfield, which is only a little way down the road from me in Chesterfield, you see. So it was, I guess, the modern way of job hunting that got me here. I wasn't looking for a job specifically here. It was more about I wanted a part-time job in health and safety and in something that I was interested in. There were lots of part-time jobs around, or part-time health and safety jobs, but some of them are consultancies, which sort of didn't really float my boat at the time. This was actually the first one that really felt that I saw and thought, that's one I could really get interested in,
Okay, so what was the main appeal, the main draw then for the coal authority? As you said, you had a mining background. Was it really that kind of connection to mining and the experience you picked up in other things, or was there another reason on the advert or the insight that you saw into the role that made it really tick your boxes?
I think there was. I'd be lying if I didn't say there wasn't a bit of a draw. I'm going back to where I started my career, so I got the sense. I thought I'd know the people and know the situations and the language almost. So I thought that would put me in a really good place. So there was kind of a bit of a return to where I'd come from, which felt good, and knowing what they did after a little bit of research, it seemed such a varied opportunity that would suit me and was something I was looking for, and that has proved to be the case. The huge amount of services and products that we get involved in was really something I was looking for, just a bit more variety.
That's great. That's really interesting, obviously coming from the outside. And then obviously the other interesting thing is, Mike, having been here for so long, what was it that made you start to think around job sharing? And obviously you went through that process of getting that permission, I suppose, or approval for it to happen. Can you explain a little bit of the background to that? And I suppose what happened when you and Rob first met? What was that like? And how did you figure things out? Because I think that's the interesting thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, so having been, as I mentioned earlier, been here for 20 odd years, obviously been working for coming up to 40. The Coal Authority, I've been involved in a lot of the quality, diversity, inclusion work and chair of Men's Network. We talk a lot about wellbeing, and a lot of organisations talk a lot about wellbeing. But one of the things I found with the Coal Authority, I was thinking about actually for my wellbeing, I'd quite like, still really enjoyed, really passionate about what I do, but I wanted a bit more time to do other things, to spend time with family. And so I came to the decision. I was fortunate enough to have been here a long time, so the civil service offer what they call partial retirement. So I looked at the opportunity to partially retire, and I spoke to my boss at the time, James Louth, who's People and Resource Director, and just approached it with him. And to be honest, he was really, really supportive. And one of the things that's come out of it for me is very much that as an organisation, we talk a lot about wellbeing, but actually what we really do is we demonstrate that we mean it, that actually when we say we look at flexible working activities and opportunities, then that's what happens. And so James was very, very supportive. We discussed a kind of plan. We discussed when it would happen. We went through the process of recruitment, and actually what was really great was that Rob took the time to speak to me before he even applied for the role. And so we had a very early conversation. So I was able to explain to him about the role, about the diversity of it, about how interesting it is and the challenges. And I think that was something that really kind of pushed Rob into thinking, you know what, this is exactly the sort of thing and challenge and interesting thing I'd like to do.
I think just to pick up on Mike's point there, that early conversation was for me very important because you're in a position I'd never job shared before or anything close to it, and you've got to work with a guy or a girl, and you've got to, how are you going to get on with that person? And although it's a relatively short telephone conversation, you could actually think after that conversation, I think he's someone I could get on with. Forget the job. If I was ringing him up and saying, oh, you want to go for a pint, having never met him, he'd say, well, actually, yeah, I could go for a pint with that guy. So you kind of, you get a feeling that you could work with someone.
How has that handover process worked? I suppose that might be the biggest maybe fear for people considering job sharing, or will they just spend all the week trying to catch up on what the other person's been up to and not really achieve anything, or vice versa? So yeah, how did you kind of plan and consider that handover and how it would impact on your team?
Yeah, so when Rob joined, the first thing we did was we arranged to have a kind of 4 to 6 week period, actually 6 weeks, where we were both together. Rob was obviously new into the coal authority. It's really important that he had a very thorough induction, understood what we were about, what the role was about, and so on. So that first kind of 6 weeks together was great, because one, it meant we could carry on and still manage the workload and continue with the work that we do. But at the same time, gave us a chance to really develop our thinking around how we would work together. So we developed a few strategies at that point about what working days we'd do, because we'd not agreed that at that point, what the overlap should be, and how we should hand over. And so we developed a kind of working a way of working, which, as we all know, theoretically you plan to do that, and then when you start to do it, then you start to experience how things are working, what works well and what doesn't. And we're now about 8-9 months in, and certainly it's true to say that we've learned a lot along the way. We've done some tweaks along the way of things. Some things have worked really well, other things we've had to develop.
I think the one thing we both found, I think, was people adjusting around us. In the early days, we had an idea that we would have a Wednesday afternoon handover. So I finish on a Wednesday at 5 o'clock at the end of close of play. Mike would start at Wednesday lunchtime, and so we'd have an afternoon where we could kick a few things around, hand over stuff, and if there was something we both needed to look at together, there was the opportunity. What we found were people weren't used to us having to deal with two people, so they filled our diaries. People that thought they had to speak to one of us or both of us filled our diaries very quickly. We had to pretty quickly get the message out there, and most people responded and respected that you speak to whoever's here. Unless there's a real need, sometimes it might be personal matters with our staff that you think actually both of us need to be there. But for 90% of the work, speak to one of us. You don't need to speak to both of us. So we kind of managed to declutter the diary a little bit, but not ever so successfully. And we've had to do a couple of things since then just to make sure that we're preserving enough time for us to both be together to pick up on the really important things. The more routine matters we can deal with in almost like correspondence in the secure Dropbox that we've got, where we can leave each other messages and links to the work we're doing.
So yes, so we did a few tweaks technically around things, and we also did this idea of being kind of one person being in the seat. So saying to people, don't wait for one or other of us to be around. If you need to discuss something that relates to what we do, whichever of us is available, come and see us, and we'll make sure we hand over to one another. So that's worked pretty successfully. I think one of the challenges that you have with this type of role over, say, a production line or something like that, where you kind of hand over and you're doing almost the same thing and just handing over to the next shift. With this, it's such a varied portfolio of work and objectives that one of the challenges is where we have a specific project that each of us is running with across that. So that's one of the challenges that we've had. And what we've done, one of the other tweaks we've done, is we've actually changed slightly, or I've rather changed my working pattern to work the full day on a Wednesday and then finish on a Friday afternoon. Some logical and obvious reasons. Very often there's a lot more happening on a Wednesday than there is on a Friday afternoon. So that means that Rob and I have got a little bit more time together where we do need to deal with particular things and we have kind of directorate meetings. We're both available for those, and often the heads calls are around that time. So what I was finding, because I wasn't available for heads calls because of my kind of working pattern, even though we had a handover, it felt a little bit kind of separate from my fellow heads. And so actually changing the working patterns meant that we can kind of alternate the heads meetings, which is great because we all now feel connected, and also they see me as well. Otherwise, they're actually going to only ever see Rob, in a heads setting. So some of those things have worked really, really well. And I think the other thing that has really struck me about this, and I thought about before we started job sharing, is although Rob and I have got similarities in our background, we have got quite a diverse range of experience. And that idea that we both have experience in different areas and also skills and attributes in different areas, I think kind of makes for a more rounded role, and we can bounce things off each other. And I hope, and hopefully people agree, actually that can lead to making better decisions.
I suppose, Rob, just what are the things that you're going to try and implement going forward for this year? As you say, you're going through this transition period. You haven't achieved everything you want to achieve, but that's obviously possible in that short time frame. So what are the big focuses for health, safety, wellbeing and facilities for the next few months or the next financial year?
Okay, Lee, yeah. I mean, it's not really anything new. I get the real sense that this organisation has grown very quickly in the last few years, and we need to make sure our health, safety and wellbeing systems have kept up with that pace of change and that growth. That's a key objective for both Mike and I and our teams over the next year. I think perhaps I bring a little bit of experience of a different kind of system, so can bring some experience from elsewhere in how we can develop those systems to suit the needs of the business. And that's very much our focus over the next year.
Okay, guys, that's great. I really appreciate your time and giving us that little insight into what you do. I'm sure we can follow up with another podcast on this and just see how you're getting on in the next 6 to 12 months. But for now, I really appreciate your time. And obviously, people listening, if they're interested in exploring this job share idea, obviously have a word with Pod. And if people are listening externally, the Coal Authority does offer these kind of opportunities. So have a look at some of our recruitment posts. And if you're interested, get in touch.
So we hope you found that podcast interesting and insightful. As we're showing it on our social media channels, if you have any questions or further comments or any suggestions for future podcasts, we'd be really pleased to hear from you. So don't be afraid to get in touch. And we look forward to spending some time with you next time. Thank you.